Hello, Dr. Ray. I'm sure I'm going to get really good advice from you.
Why do I have to be the insightful professional?
Thank you for empowering me.
Here's what I think is going on.
I think you're a hoot and a half.
My idea, my theory, my guidance is a bit of a stretch.
I just love your show.
Does that comfort you?
No.
Am I close?
No. You are really smart.
I am sensitive and understanding and nurturing.
Your show to me is like a comedy information show.
Did I make you feel a lot better or what?
No, you made me feel worse.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Well, that's kind of a close introduction. I am in the very, very place where Mother Angelica made it all happen through EWTN. I'm down here in the studios of EWTN, and there's been some complaints, I'll say it right now, that I'm not sensitive enough and I don't have enough feminine-type qualities to my persona. So Vanessa has been added to the program, and she will, in fact, she's doing the producing on the other side of the glass here in EWTN. So she will provide that sensitive, nurturant side that I am unable to provide. Also, I want to tell you, I was looking in the June issue, recently released, of Purgatory Today, and they said that this program, of all the Catholic programs, is the only one that can take days off your purgatory, because I can be so irritating to listen to. So, in fact, if you call in, I'll give you the number here in a second, it could even be more days off your purgatory. Doubled. The number to get onto the program is 877-573-7825. 877-57-EQUAL is the number to call. Reasons people call: one, the main reason is they got a situation in their life, circumstances in their life, person in their life, something, motions, behavior, thinking, that they want to just bounce past me. And sometimes I pick up the bounce, and sometimes I drop the bounce. Are you looking to see where we got that? My dear friend and producer man and boss, Tom Price, is here fiddling with this board in front. You know, I noticed there's... Now, just as an aside here, I don't want to disrupt the flow of the program, but I've noticed there's no pictures of me anywhere in the EWTN.
That's by design.
It's by there used to be some, you know.
We took them down.
Okay, I thought so. But I don't appreciate the fact that somebody put a mustache on my picture. I don't appreciate that at all. All right, so we got the lines up. Okay, let me tell you what to do to get on. 877-57-EQUAL is the number. Situation in your life got a question about. If you would like to offer some help to somebody that has just previously called, or sometimes people will call in after a day or two and say, you had a caller on Tuesday, and then they will give something that they think will be helpful. I enjoy calls that are generic, some aspect of the human condition, perhaps as it relates to faith, perhaps it is something you don't understand about psychology or about emotions or about development or intellect. Those calls are welcome too. And the quickest way to get to the top of the line is to disagree with me. Absolutely. If I can't explain why I offered what I offered, then I didn't really think it through enough. 877-57-EQUAL is the number to call. Yesterday, I talked about panic attacks. And I talked that most people in their lives have had something they would call a panic attack. They would describe it that way, a heavy surge of anxiety, something that would make them feel very, very scared, if you will. Sounds kind of redundant, doesn't it? A panicky feeling makes you feel scared? Well, that's exactly what it does. A panic feeling in and of itself is scary, but when you are afraid of it, it doubles down on the anxiety. One of the things that people are afraid of during a panic attack is they think it won't stop. How long is this going to happen? Well, the one thing that is true, and this is a therapeutic trick. If I get somebody in my office who's talked about having previous panic attacks, one or more, I'll ask them, are you still panicking? And they'll say, well, no, that was yesterday. I said, so the panic attack stopped. It passed. Well, yeah, it did. I just didn't know when it would. Well, you may not know when it will, but it will. Many people are worried it won't. They think this is some kind of situation I'm going to have to live with. No, this is not true. All panic attacks will stop. Some sooner than later, but if there's nothing physically wrong, no underlying medical condition, it will pass. Picture yourself sitting in my office. We're talking, and somebody breaks in. They just bust through the door, and they're brandishing a knife, and they're threatening. They seem to be rather unstable, and they're talking about how psychologists do little but take people's money. And they don't do much else other than that. Now, first of all, my first response to this is to turn to you and to say, don't agree, please. And then, what would be your first reaction? Panic. Probably terror. And it's a natural thing. Your body is built to do this. If you're facing a threat, if you're facing danger, God wired into you a very precious gift. The gift of anxiety. When it is in its right role, it's what you want. Because it energizes your body. It mobilizes your body to act. What are you going to do in that situation? Now, you can't run because he's sitting near the door, so you can't flee. And you're not going to fight because he has a knife. So you freeze. You just sit in terror. You freeze. So this person continues to ramble harshly about he was a previous client of mine and he didn't get any better. And I said, well, join the crowd. No, I wouldn't say that. I make jokes, but not in situations like that. As he goes on and on and on and on, he's clearly agitated. He's manic. It's been about 45 minutes now. Maybe an hour. Would your level of anxiety be the same as it was when he first burst into the door? Probably not. Why? He's still there. He's still threatening. He still is agitated. Why are you less anxious? Even just a little. Why? Is it because you think he's not going to do anything? And you're thinking to yourself, well, if he hasn't done anything up to this point, he's probably not going to do anything at all. That's not it. The chemicals that surge through your system, adrenaline, norepinephrine, they're not unlimited. They can't surge indefinitely. Eventually, they're going to start subsiding. Your blood level of those chemicals is going to start going down. Now, that is an extreme, extreme situation. That's a terror-filled situation. But even then, some of your anxiety is going to pass. Stretch it out to 3 hours. He's been sitting in there for 3 hours. Probably you would now be at a low level of tension. You'd still be scared, but you wouldn't be totally overwhelmed by fear. Why? Because the chemicals responsible for your panic have dissipated quite a bit. That's what happens within a panic attack. You essentially run out of chemicals a little bit, but you run out quicker if you're not afraid of the panic attack. If indeed you recognize this is my body acting up, I'm not in any danger, Nobody's threatening me. There's no dog growling at me 2 feet away that's 140 pounds. This is just something that is inexplicable right now. 877-573-7825. That's the number to call. Get onto the program. I want to hear from you. I'm down in the studios here in Irondale, EWTN. Delighted to be down here doing some things with the folks, getting to meet some very delightful friends. Now, I will talk louder for some of you up in the northeastern part of the United States or Ohio and up of those mid-Atlantic states. I'm down south, so I'm going to probably have to talk a little louder so you can hear me. 877-57-EQUAL. Put you in touch with Eric, who will put you in touch with me.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Ann Arbor Smiles is a state-of-the-art dental practice led by the talents of Doctors Dan Kennedy, Chris Marzoni, and Stephen Gray. One of their many satisfied patients is Father Deacon Lawrence Hendricks.
I was one of the first patients to receive a CEREC crown from Dr. Kennedy. The CEREC technology allows for restorations to be done in one visit. They always use the most advanced techniques in dentistry. I've always enjoyed the friendly staff and the personal relationships that I have at Ann Arbor Smiles.
Go to AnnArborSmiles.com today.
You can hear Ave Maria Radio from your home computer or your smartphone, where you can access Ave Maria Radio from anywhere in the world, regardless of the time of day. All you need to do is download the Ave Maria Radio app from the App Store, Google Play, or Galaxy stores. You never have to lose signal. You never have to miss your favorite program ever again. It's what you want and how you want it. And with the Ave Maria Radio archives, it's available when you want it most. The Ave Maria Radio app. Herbert radios aren't available.
I don't think we've replaced our siding since we moved in 20 years ago. But I'm sure it's still fine, right?
We better call Mighty Dog Roofing of Ann Arbor.
Damaged siding can cause mold buildup and weaken your home structure. Protect your family by calling local Catholics Dan and Mary Flanagan at Mighty Dog Roofing for a free inspection of your siding, roof, or windows. Mighty Dog Roofing, 734-224-4916. That's 734-224-4916.
Okay, we got room to listen to you here on the program, 877-57-EQUAL. That's the number to call. Get on the line. Summertime is generally a quieter time. Typically, there is a lower call volume in the summertime. I think that may be because that people are doing things, they are occupied. Don't blame me then if your kids are on an afternoon talk show. Don't blame me if you can't go to a restaurant. Not my fault. 877-57-EQUAL. Want to hear from you, especially if anxiety is plaguing you. You know, the last couple days I've been focusing a lot upon anxiety. Let's say that you're out and about, and a big dog, mean-looking dog, growling dog, starts heading towards you, and he is not looking too friendly. What happens? Well, the anxiety system that God wired into you, called the sympathetic nervous system, kicks in immediately. The body mobilizes. Your heart beats faster, pumps more blood to ready muscles. Your pupils widen because, in fact, you want to see better. All these things are put in place. They're reflexive. They happen. They are energized by a little part of the brain called the amygdala. Very tiny little almond-shaped thing. There's actually two amygdalas, but they act as one in the lower centers of the brain. They are instinctive. Danger is threatening, and your body will react. In effect, it is a major anxiety reaction. Understandably so, right? You do not think something is wrong with you because you're reacting this way to this coming on fast big dog. Well, you also happen to be president of your organization. You like being president. It's good to be president. And you've pretty much enjoyed your tenure the last 2 years, except for one thing. Every so often, you have to give a speech. And you've been able to avoid this. You've been able to pass it on to colleagues to do these speeches. But next month, you've got the regional conference coming up, and you are expected, as a president of your locale, to be up on stage in a panel. These regional conferences are big deals, and there's several hundred people sitting out there in that audience, and you're sitting on that stage. And you're starting, as you think about it, and definitely as you now get to the convention, and you're there, and you know that this afternoon you're going to have to be on that panel, the same reaction is happening in your body that was happening with the dog. You're sweating, your heart rate's starting to go up, you're breathing more shallow. What is going on here? Your mind is tricking your body. Your mind is telling your body danger is here. You will be facing danger. There is no danger. Not unless somebody's going to throw something at you or somebody bites your leg on the way up to the panel. There's no danger there. But in your mind, you've created danger. People are going to be staring at me. What if I sound stupid? What if I'm boring? What if I can't answer a question? What if people think, how'd she get to be president? So given that, in fact, it's the same reaction. The body's dumb. The body does what the mind tells it. And the mind says, dangerous dog. Body says, okay, I'll be anxious, I'll get ready. Body says, dangerous panel. Mind says, dangerous panel. Body says, okay, I'll be ready. I want to get to your calls here first. I'll give you more on this. But I want to go to Jake from Minnesota. And Jake, your question is something I've wrestled with a lot. But your question doesn't need to be wrestled with. Mine does. Hi, Jake.
Yeah, well, I don't have to wrestle with mine.
Because you're a farmer and you do work on Sunday and it's necessary work. That's not in any way a sin. Not at all.
Okay. You think it's that clear?
Yeah, I do. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a priest, obviously. But the way the church teaches is necessary work. And here's the other thing, too, and this is where I wrestle. I've asked a lot of priests about this. You know, I like mowing my lawn, and because of my schedule is so erratic, sometimes Sundays is the one day I can get it in, and all I'm doing is walking. And I've had priests tell me, don't worry about it. You know, okay, you're not working hard, you're not doing servile labor, you're just walking. But in your case, your farm is your livelihood. And that stuff has to get done. Now, if you say to yourself, okay, I don't have to do any work in the fields. However, that barn does need painting. Well, it may not be necessary to paint that barn on Sunday if you can paint it on another day. That's the difference.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to go out into my yard and weed eat. I don't have to weed eat on Sunday. I can weed eat tomorrow. I had a priest one time tell me, he said, it comes down to a lot of what you enjoy. You know, if I enjoy doing something that somebody else might consider work. Oh, okay, I'll give you a small example. I lift weights and I do aerobics. Nothing that I would do work-wise is as hard as lifting weights or doing aerobics. Does that mean I shouldn't lift weights or do aerobics on a Sunday? Because if you gauge it by how hard it is, oh, those are much harder. Mowing my lawn, which is walking up and down some stripes with a self-propelled mower and listening to the rosary or listening to music in my headphones is one whole heck of a lot less laborious, I don't know, than taking the dumbbells and trying to see how many I can get. So I think your situation, I can't imagine. I can't imagine priests telling you, no, Jake, you can't work your farm on a Sunday.
Well, I guess it's more just like evaluating when the work needs to get done.
Well, that does come down to it. Yeah, if you're neglecting your family, if you're neglecting a chance to spend a little more time doing spiritual things, and it's not necessary. You don't have to go do this. You're just simply, your wife says, hey, can you be with me and the kids? No, I gotta get out there. Well, the I gotta get out there really isn't an I gotta get out there. It's more of a I want to get out there.
Right.
So so in that case you wait a little bit, but you don't become scrupulous. I had that problem. I'm thinking, okay, what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do?
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, I wonder if I'm just getting a little icky about it. And the other thing is, sometimes I think my dad and I, it's a family farm. We disagree what's critical right now. So.
Well, here's the other thing too. The old Baltimore Catechism said you don't do servile work on Sunday. The newer Catechism mostly focuses on keeping the day special to the Lord. Right? It doesn't emphasize so much, okay, you got to just scrupulously avoid work. Because now how far do you take it? Do you not go out to eat because those folks are working on a Sunday? Well, assuming that many of them are not even Catholic or practicing Catholics, they're not even thinking about it. Or they could have to work on a Sunday. So you come down to, you start weighing everything like I was tempted to do so many times, and I finally got over most of that, realizing, okay, here's my goal. If this work is hard work and it's not necessary, I'm not going to go out there and trim the bushes, and it's not necessary, and I can do it some other time, and it's not urgent, then I'm not going to do it, right? But if it's something like, go ahead.
Well, I guess then that's kind of the next level to the question is, what should I be doing with my family on Sunday? We have kind of a really rural parish, and the only mass time is that Saturday evening. And sometimes Sunday just seems, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to maybe we're not keeping it holy or special. I don't know.
Well,
do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, I do. If you have a choice, let's say, for example, somebody needs visited, go visit them. Go visit them. Rather than saying, well, I'd rather mow the lawn, or I'd rather go out and clean out that stable. Go visit them. Choose to do something on a Sunday that you just wouldn't normally do. Some kind of charitable thing. I have an aunt who's elderly and she's in assisted living, and lots of times, rather than, say, for example, working on a book that I'm working on, I'll say, let's go see my aunt. Let's go see my aunt. So I make myself do that to keep the day kind of special, and definitely don't skip the rosary on Sunday. That's for sure. But I wrestle with that. If I'm going to go out of town, let's say I'm going out of town. Last week I was heading out of town for a week. Well, okay, should I mow the lawn on Sunday before I leave on Monday? If I don't mow it, my wife would mow it while I was gone. But wouldn't it be better if I did that for her? So you kind of weigh it like that. You use decent judgment. And I thought, you know what? The lawn needs mowed. She won't have to mow it. So I hope I just threw a few points to consider at you there, Jake. God bless you, my friend. 877-57-EQUAL. That is the number. Got a question about a panic attack coming up. Certainly like to address those. I'm working on a book about anxiety, so I'm learning a lot as I do it. I just got a text from my wife. She said she still has to mow the back. Well, I told her I mow the front because I want to make my lines straight, Thanks for joining me here. Dr. Ray back in EWTN, at EWTN. Delighted to be down here visiting with friends in the studio. Vanessa, delightful producer on the other side of the plexiglass there. We're adding a feminine, soft, nurturant touch to the program, which I sometimes lack. I'm trying to work on my toxic sensitivity, but Vanessa has muliebrity. Look that one up. That is one, and almost nobody knows what it means, but it'll fit, Vanessa. Muliebrity. Randall is calling. He thinks he might have had a panic attack. Hey, Randall.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking the call.
What was it like?
Well, I was on a cruise a couple of weeks ago, and it was about a 7-hour drive to get there. We had a little complication getting there. Of course, got to do the check-in process. It was the first time I'd been on a cruise. And after we got settled in, I went to the room, and I was laying across the couch. My wife was doing some things, and she said my eyes just fixed straight ahead, and I kind of had a weird feeling to begin with, and then my eyes fixed, and I had something a weird feeling that started at the top of my head and went all the way to my feet, and I could feel it. And she said my eyes fixed, and I turned a weird gray color. And she started slapping me, and I don't remember any of that. But it didn't last very long, a couple of minutes. But then after it passed, I came to myself, and I said, "What happened?" And I felt weak, and I had a lack of energy ever since. I was talking to a guy who works for a counseling company. He's not a counselor, but he sees a lot of that, and he told me that I had a panic attack. And I was just wondering what you thought about it.
I wouldn't be so quick to say that.
Okay.
First of all, you may have, of course, and there's reason to think that it was building, and we'll get to that in a second. Typically, when somebody has very, very weird kind of reactions like that, if they're where they can, they'll go to the emergency room. They'll think, "Oh, okay, something's really wrong here, and I don't know what it is. Never felt like this before. My wife is noticing me doing weird things." Head for the emergency room, and most of the time they get a clean bill of health. So let's say that nothing was wrong, nothing was physically wrong. We can't know that because you didn't get any kind of exam. However, you said it went away, the intensity of it went away, but then you said you still felt odd for a long time after that?
I was sort of off balance, kept spilling things, even that night and the next day, which I don't normally do.
I wouldn't be so quick to call that a panic attack. Typically, a panic attack is not going to lead you to that kind of uncoordination, especially after. But that's long since passed. You've not had any episodes like that since?
No, I haven't. No, sir.
Okay.
No.
Well, then let's look at maybe there was something temporary, low blood sugar, some kind of heart palpitations or something. There are physical things that can cause it. I'm not a doctor, but I've read up on it, and that may have passed. Now, if it happens again, I would suggest you definitely go. Now let's go ahead. Please go ahead. She wants you to. Right?
My wife's been trying to get me to go to the doctor. I probably need to get it checked even now.
Okay. And it could be high blood pressure. Real high blood pressure can really screw you up too. If your blood pressure.
Well, that was my next question. I've had a problem with high blood pressure. It's been borderline, and I wondered about that too.
Well, let's assume that it was your body reacting for some reason, but there was nothing identifiably seriously wrong. Okay, here's what you described. You said it was a long drive. And I'm going to assume that during this long drive, you were tense. You were thinking, are we going to get there in time? I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to do. Where do I park? All these kind of what-ifs were floating around. Yeah, okay, so you were getting yourself agitated, even though you may not have felt heavily agitated. It was a long stretch of arousal. So that's first thing. Secondly, you got into an unfamiliar situation. You know, when you go do a cruise, man, I'll tell you what, you got to go over here, you got to go over there, you got to watch this line, you got to do that line. What am I supposed to do with this? They want my passport. All of these unknowns and things you've never done before. It's kind of like the first time at a big airport on steroids. All right. So you're already agitated, and now you're trying to navigate a situation that's completely unfamiliar. All right. So you definitely were brewing arousal in your body. You get to your stateroom,
makes sense.
You lay down, and it surges. For whatever the reason, that happens. Now, it's quite common in a panic attack that prior to it, there had been a buildup of stressor. It's kind of like an engine, you know. You put your foot on the gas, you put your foot on the gas, you put your foot on the gas, and finally, you put it too hard, and the engine just goes and goes into the red zone. Okay, right. So if it was a panic attack, it's very explainable by what led up to it. That is one of the common reasons that someone will have this inexplicable surge of anxiety, which can come with some physical symptoms. It can. You can feel lightheaded. You can labored breathing, even some fuzziness with your eyes. Certainly that can happen. So get a clean bill of health here, Randall. On that. Yeah. Yesterday I talked about that. I had one when I was playing softball, practicing, and I had a panic attack. And I didn't panic about the panic attack because I knew kind of what was going on. But I found out later I had low blood sugar at that time. I hadn't eaten for a whole day. And the blood sugar just kicked it off. And I just went into what felt like a real intense anxiety episode. And that's what it was. But I wasn't panicked about being panicked. You know, you're unsure about what that was.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. At this point, since you haven't had any symptoms since, and it's been a while, I take it?
Right, a couple of weeks. Okay.
Likely it was just your body surging, but you might want to check that blood pressure or see if there's anything that could episodically surge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anxiety I've been working on the blood pressure since that time. It has gotten better, seems like.
Good.
I'm hoping
anxiety can do funny things to you. It really can. What was designed as a system that was going to protect us and was going to ensure our survival in modern society, like what you went through, rush, unfamiliar, shaky. In modern society, the body's doesn't really know it's not supposed to react like that, so it does. Randall, thank you so much, sir. God bless you. This is Dr. Ray from EWTN Studios. Thank you for joining me here on the Doctor's Inn. We still have some time to take a few more of your calls at 877-573-7825. You know the interesting thing about anxiety? First of all, it's the number one reason that people seek counseling. Why? Because it's scary. It makes you think something is wrong with you. You don't know why it's happening. And so you think, am I having a heart attack? I've had folks in my office who have gone to the emergency room and their doctor and still are not convinced that what they experienced was an anxiety surge. I'm not convinced of it. They live in fear of the next one. Happened once, could happen again. But here's the interesting thing about it. If you could snap your fingers and not be afraid of it happening again, if you were totally reassured that this was nothing more. Now, obviously, when I say nothing more, I'm not trivializing it. What I'm meaning is it's nothing more dangerous to your well-being than an anxiety surge. If you knew that, you wouldn't live in fear of it. You wouldn't say, that feeling is so terrible, it's so awful, it's so scary, I don't ever, ever, ever want it to happen again. Now, the interesting thing is, the panic attacks are anxiety on steroids, literally. But for many people, they live with anxiety that limits their freedoms. They can't go certain places. They'd like to, but they can't. They can't do certain things or be with certain people. They'd like to, but they can't. Why? Because they get anxious. I had a colleague once who, for whatever the reason, had developed a terrible fear of escalators. Now, I had developed a fear of escalators because I was at an airport once, and I was on the escalator when the power went out. I was halfway down, and the escalator stopped. So I was stranded there for 3 hours on that escalator. Now, I know there are those of you listening right now thinking, that doesn't make any sense. Walk down the escalator. Escalators can't malfunction. They just simply become stairs. I know, it's a joke. I think it's a good one, though. But anyway, for whatever the reason, she was terrified of getting on an escalator. What could it be? She never had an ill experience on one. She couldn't identify any reason. Was it the grinding and the clunking steel? Was it how long and narrow they are? Was it having to do the 3-step dance as you get off, so you don't stumble and look foolish? She didn't know. All she knew was that she just avoided them. And she traveled a lot. She went into airports. So she had to find elevators. Now, they're fewer and farther between than escalators. They're the main people movers in airports. Or she couldn't take stairs if she had luggage. So it was definitely inconvenient to her. She tried a few times getting on the escalators, but she panicked. She just started shaking and got really scared and couldn't get off quick enough, and that was it. That kept her from doing it again for weeks or months. But it's interesting because each time she panicked and she ran off, she made the anxiety stronger. So, the first impulse when you're in an anxious situation is to get out of it. Leave it. That's one of the worst things to do. It makes it worse. Because you're reinforcing leaving. And in the reduction of the anxiety, believe it or not, temporarily it's reduced. You make it stronger in the long run. It's a very tricky thing, this anxiety. Let's go to Mary from Portland. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for the call. What's up?
Well, I have bipolar 2 disorder.
Okay.
And I was seeing a psychiatrist for 15 years, very experienced. He does clinical trials with psychiatric drugs. And he retired. And I'm having a very hard time finding a qualified psychiatrist. And I'm finding out that a lot of people aren't going into that field. Do you know why that is? Because it's a big, big problem. I mean, these psychiatrists aren't even taking patients. You're on waiting lists.
Yes, that is very true. There's definitely a shortage in the field, Mary. A couple places to look. If you go to CatholicPsychotherapy.org, they list mental health professionals by geographic area, CatholicPsychotherapy.org, or CatholicTherapist.org. You live in Portland, so that is the home of Blessed Virgin Mary Radio, right?
Yeah, no, it's Modern Day Radio.
Modern Day, okay. So they've been around a lot of years, and if you get a hold of somebody there at the studio, they might have knowledge of where you can find someone. Or they might even have a little bit of a pull to say, yes, I have a friend or I have a colleague, and I will talk to that person and see if they can get you in.
So why do you think people aren't going into that field? I was told the problem with mental illness is your medicine will work for a while, and then it stops working. And then you try new medicines, and sometimes it doesn't work, and there's a time frame, like maybe 2 weeks, where it takes a while to work, and it's like hit or miss. Why can't we figure out the brain? It's just so complex.
Because the brain is the most complex thing in the universe. We know of nothing even remotely that can touch the complexity of the brain. Trillions and trillions of neuronal connections in the brain. So you're right, it is trial and error a lot of times. Psychiatrists will tell you, we're going to try this medication with this dosage. We'll see if we have to tinker with the dosage. We'll see if, in fact, this medication doesn't have the effect we'd like, so we're going to try something else. That happens a lot. That's why...
It's so painful, though. People don't realize how much we suffer because of that problem.
Well, what you're tapping into is the fact that this is a very inexact science. The science of manipulating the neuronal functioning of the brain. It's a very inexact science. It isn't something where you come in and you say, okay, these are my symptoms. And they say, oh, well, see, those 4 symptoms, take this medication and it works every time. It's not like that. We're on the very front end of understanding some of this stuff.
Well, that's why I was told that people don't go into that field, because it's hit or miss.
Well, I think it's like anything else. You got to have a passion for it. I think you're tapping into the fact that, indeed, well, it's kind of like getting into a psychiatrist is almost as hard as getting into a dermatologist. You know, you call a dermatologist, and a lot of them will say, I can see you in 6 months. You say, yeah, but I got a suspicious mole now, kind of thing. So I would. Did the psychiatrist that you were seeing close up the office?
Yes.
Okay.
He retired. He was like 75.
Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to see where he might have referred some of his clients. Did he do that?
Well, that's a good idea. I never thought of that.
Because he would do that. I mean, I know if I left my practice, I would have to refer my clients to somebody.
Yeah.
So you can check into that and see what he did.
And another thing, why do they call it mental illness? They need to rename that. It's such a stigma.
Well, you're right. It's probably called. It's not really an illness. It's a disorder. A better term would be disorder.
So why do they call it illness?
Because it's part of the old medical model that was around decades ago, that psychology and psychiatry wanted to be like medicine. So what we did is we decided we're going to have symptoms, and we're going to have medication, and we're going to have terminology that parallels the medical profession. And you're right, those phrases take a long time to fade away. And right now, mental illness is still probably the top term that is used, even though it's not really accurate. I mean, you can have a mental illness where, in fact, there is a bacterial infection or even some type of neurodegenerative disease. You could call that an illness. But because we don't know if you were diagnosed with bipolar 2, we don't really know why that is, Mary. We don't know what it is about your brain exactly that's causing that. So we call it an illness, but you're right, it would be better called some type of disorder.
Let people know that it's very difficult to treat mental illness, and I think people don't realize the things that people with mental illness go through.
It's better than it was. I can give you that assurance. It is better than it was. There is a higher profile of understanding mental disorders, mental problems, than it used to be. That's for sure. Mary, thanks for your patience. You check with your former psychiatrist and also call Mater Dei. They may know. There's two places I'd refer you to. You take good care, Mary. This is Dr. Ray. Thanks for joining me.
The 2025 Encounter Conference, July 16th to 18th at the Glass City Center in Toledo, Ohio.
God is uniting what the devil is trying to divide. God is wanting to bring the church together in the fullness of the Holy Spirit.
Join thousands from around the world and over 18 inspiring speakers, including Father Matthias Thalen, Patrick Rice, Peter Herbeck, Jeff Cavins, Father Boniface, Dr. Mary Healy, Bishop Joseph Espeat, and more.
The church, anointed with the Spirit that was on Jesus, is meant to surpass the works of Jesus when he was on earth. It's because we share in his anointing.
God's pouring out his anointing. They're not only to love you and encourage you, he's coming to equip you and to empower you.
What if every one of us says yes with an unqualified, absolutely total yes to the Lord? The world will have the saints it longs for.
Youth tracks are available to bring the whole family. Tickets are expected to sell out. Visit EncounterCatholic.com to register. EncounterCatholic.com.
What is catechesis and why do we care? The job of catechesis is to reveal all the joy as well as the demands of the way of Christ, says the Catholic Catechism. The way of Christ is summed up in the catechesis of the Beatitudes. Jesus gave us the 8 Beatitudes in his Sermon on the Mount. The Catholic Catechism tells us this teaching is the only path that leads to the eternal beatitude, happiness, for which the human heart longs. The catechesis of sin and forgiveness challenges us. Unless man acknowledges that he is a sinner, states the Catechism, he cannot know the truth about himself, which is a condition for acting justly, and without the offer of forgiveness, man could not bear the truth. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
From the studios of EWTN, with my producer here, Vanessa, the lovely and talented Vanessa. 1 month here at EWTN. I think it's unfair what they did to her, putting her on my program. She's already, I noticed she's starting to twitch. There's a little twitch there, and I don't like the fact that she's got her fingers in her ears and she's humming some song while I'm talking. I don't appreciate that, Vanessa. Okay? All right, she doesn't do that with anybody else. David Andrews is coming in right after me. She's not going to do that with him. Going from me to David Andrews in 1 hour is kind of like going from Wheel of Fortune to Jeopardy. It's kind of like going from kindergarten to your PhD, you know. No time to take any more calls, so I want a few more comments about anxiety. Here's a phrase to keep in mind when anxiety threatens to limit your freedom. When you can't do what you would like to do because you get too anxious about it. Distress or danger? That's what you have to ask yourself. Am I in danger here? If the answer is no, then you're experiencing distress. Now, distress is certainly uncomfortable. Could be very uncomfortable. But it's not dangerous. It is something that your body is doing because you've tricked it. You've told it. Your mind has said something about this situation, this place, this person is scary. It's not. You're experiencing distress, but you're not in danger. And the great thing about anxiety, if there is a great thing about it, because it can be so intense, people think it's serious. Because it can be so intense, they think it is something that is stubborn, hard to conquer. The exact opposite is true. The strategies to overcome anxiety are relatively pretty straightforward. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. If you would stay in that anxious situation and more or less just float through the anxiety, just recognize what it is. It's just your body surging, nothing else is happening, nothing dangerous, not being threatened, it will pass. And with repetition, and probably not too many, that anxiety will not be there anymore. You will have rewired your brain. Literally. The pathway from your amygdala to your cortex, which is saying danger, 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 will be rewired. No danger, no danger, no danger. It'll stand down. You'll do that. I'll give you some stories next time around on how some people have done that. Some fascinating stuff. But for right now, I got to run. I do so much appreciate it. From here, I'm going to go to reading a download of my most recent book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. Vanessa, you're not the almost. I just want to tell you that. You're not the almost. I am. Thanks, Andrew Kruchek, Eric Dumont. Thank you for listening. Keep me company. Walk with God. That's should not be an anxious walk.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.